The morning sky above the celestial spire gleamed with colors no human artist could capture. Ships from 1,000 worlds filled the air like metal birds, their engines humming in harmony. The massive tower stretched upward, so tall that its top disappeared into the clouds. This was a hard galactic civilization, where every species came to trade, talk, and make deals that shaped the future of worlds. Day One stood on the Imperial platform, his crimson scales catching the sunlight like rubies on fire. He was a dragon emperor, ruler of 17 worlds, commander of fleets that could darken suns. His presence made the air feel heavy. Other species moved aside when he passed, their heads bowing low. For 3,000 years, he had led his people with strength and wisdom. Today, he came for the Grand Council meeting, where the most powerful beings in the galaxy would decide the future of trade routes and peace treaties. Behind him walked his 3 children. Unji moved with grace, her silver scales perfect and shining. She would be empress one day, and everyone knew it. His middle son flew above, showing off with loops and dives that made the crowd gasp. But at the back, struggling to keep up, was Taeyong. The youngest hatchling was small for his age. His scales lacked the bright shine of his siblings. His wings, twisted slightly from birth, fluttered with effort as he tried to stay in formation. Every few meters, he would drop lower, his breath coming in short gasps. The other dragons pretended not to notice, but Day One saw their sideways glances. He saw the pity in their eyes. The procession moved through the upper districts where the wealthy and powerful lived. Crystal buildings reflected light in rainbow patterns. Alien merchants in expensive clothes watched from balconies. Everything was perfect, controlled, and orderly. This was the world Day One knew, a world of strength and perfection. Then the path turned toward the council building, crossing over a bridge that connected the upper and lower districts. Below, the merchant quarter buzzed with noise and life. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds sold everything imaginable. The air smelled of spices, metal, and a dozen types of cooking food. It was chaotic, messy, and completely different from the clean upper district. Taeyong's wings gave out. One moment he was flying, the next he was falling. His cry of surprise cut through the morning air. Day One spun around, his heart stopping. The Imperial guards dove after the hatchling, but they were too far away. Taeyong tumbled through the air, his small wings unable to catch the wind. He fell past the bridge, down into the crowded merchant quarter below. The guard swooped down immediately, but the lower district was a maze of stalls, tents, and buildings packed together. Hundreds of aliens filled the narrow streets. By the time the guards reached the area where Taeyong should have landed, he was gone. They searched frantically, their golden armor flashing as they pushed through crowds and knocked over market stalls. Day One wanted to tear the entire district apart stone by stone. His son was hurt, lost, and alone, but he was the emperor. He could not show panic. He could not show weakness. So he stood perfectly still on the bridge while his guards searched below, his claws digging into the stone, railing hard enough to crack it. In a narrow alley behind a small tea house, Jia heard a sound. It was a soft whimper, like a kitten in pain. She had just finished her morning shift and was taking out the trash when she saw him. A small dragon, no bigger than a large dog, lay crumpled against the wall. His wing bent at a wrong angle. Blood dripped from a cut on his head. Jia's first thought was to run. Dragons were dangerous. They were powerful. They ruled entire worlds. You didn't just walk up to a dragon, even a baby one. But then the little dragon made that sound again, and she saw his eyes. They were filled with pain and fear, but also something else. Hope. He was looking at her like she might help. She thought of her brother Minho, who had been born with legs that didn't work right. She remembered how people would stare at him, how some would pretend he wasn't there. She remembered the pain in his eyes when other kids wouldn't play with him. This little dragon had that same look. Jia made her decision. She took off her apron and gently wrapped it around the dragon. He was heavier than he looked, but she managed to lift him. He whimpered again, but didn't struggle. Carefully, she carried him into the tea house through the back door. The tea house was small and simple. Wooden tables, paper lanterns, and the smell of jasmine tea filled the air. Her boss, Young Ho, had gone to the market. She was alone. Jia laid the dragon on a soft cushion in the back room, where they usually stored supplies. She brought water and clean cloth. The dragon watched her with wide eyes as she cleaned his wounds. She worked gently, talking to him in a soft voice. "It's okay, little one. I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe now." She didn't know if he could understand her words, but she hoped he understood her tone. His wing was the biggest problem. It hung loosely, clearly damaged. Gia had no idea how to treat a dragon's wing, but she knew about broken bones from helping her brother. She found some straight pieces of bamboo and carefully created a splint, wrapping it with soft cloth to hold the wing in place. The dragon relaxed as she worked. His breathing became steadier. When she offered him water in a bowl, he drank gratefully. She found some dried fish in the kitchen and offered it to him. He ate slowly, never taking his eyes off her. Above, in the upper district, Day One used his ancient senses to search for his son. Dragons had abilities beyond what most species knew. He could smell his child scent on the wind. He could feel the faint pulse of Taeyong's life force. The trail led him down into the merchant quarter, through the maze of streets and alleys, to a simple tea house with paper walls. He approached silently and looked through the window. What he saw made him freeze in place. Gia sat on the floor, the little dragon's head resting in her lap. She was singing a soft human lullaby. Her hand gently stroked his scales. Taeyong's eyes were closed, and for the first time in his short life, he looked completely peaceful. There was no struggle, no pain, no trying to prove he could keep up with his siblings. Just a child being comforted by someone who cared. Day One had seen many things in his 3,000 years. He had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of worlds. He had conquered empires and negotiated peace between ancient enemies. But this simple scene, a human waitress holding his disabled son with such gentle care, shook something deep inside him. In his court, dragons avoided Taeyong. They pretended his weakness didn't exist, or they whispered about it when they thought he couldn't hear. Even his own siblings treated him differently. Day One himself had felt shame, wondering what he had done wrong to produce a defective heir. But this human, this small, weak creature from a species that dragons barely noticed, she held his son like he was precious, like his twisted wings and small size didn't matter, like he was perfect exactly as he was. Day One stepped back from the window. His guards waited nearby, ready to storm the building and retrieve the prince. One word from him, and they would break down the door. But Day One raised his hand, stopping them. "Wait," he said quietly. "I want to watch this a bit longer." Inside the tea house, Gia smiled as a little dragon fell asleep in her arms. She had no idea that the most powerful being in 17 star systems was watching her. She had no idea that this single act of kindness was about to change the course of history. She only knew that a child was hurt, and she had helped. For her, it was that simple. Day One made a decision that surprised even himself. He would not retrieve his son immediately. Instead, he wanted to understand what was happening in that small tea house. He spoke ancient words that made the air shimmer around him. His massive form shrank and changed. His crimson scales became dark brown. His imperial markings faded. Within moments, he looked like any ordinary dragon merchant, the kind that came to the Celestial Spire every day to buy and sell goods. He dismissed his guards with a gesture, searched the other districts. "Make it look like we have not found him yet." The guards hesitated, confused, but they obeyed. An emperor's command was absolute. Hyunwoo, his chief advisor, stared at him with wide eyes. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" Hyunwoo whispered urgently. The old dragon had served 3 emperors and had never seen anything like this. "I am going to have tea," Day One said simply. He walked to the front door of the tea house and pushed it open. A small bell chimed. Ja looked up from the back room. Startled, she quickly wiped her hands and came out, putting on her professional smile. A dragon customer was rare in this part of town, but business was business. "Welcome, honored guest. Please, sit anywhere you like." Day One chose a table near the back, where he could see into the room where Taeyong rested. The little dragon was sleeping now, his breathing steady. The makeshift splint on his wing looked crude but effective. "What tea would you recommend?" Day One asked, keeping his voice normal and casual. Gia thought for a moment, The jasmine is fresh today. Or, if you prefer something stronger, we have mountain root tea. It helps with tiredness. Jasmine, please. Day one watched her move around the tea house. She was young, probably not more than 20 human years. Her clothes were simple and worn from work. Nothing about her suggested anything special. Yet she had done what none of his advisors, generals, or nobles had thought to do. She had treated his son with simple kindness. Jia brought the tea and set it down carefully. She glanced toward the back room, worry crossing her face. "You seem concerned," Day One said. "Is something wrong?" She hesitated, then decided to trust him. "I found an injured dragon earlier. A baby. He fell from somewhere up high. I think he might be lost." "And you brought him inside?" Day One kept his voice neutral. "That was brave. Dragons can be dangerous." "He's just a child," Jia said quietly. "He was hurt and scared. I couldn't just leave him there." She paused. "Besides, I know what it's like." "What do you mean?" Jia sat down across from him, forgetting for a moment that he was a customer. "My brother Minho has weak legs. He was born that way. When we were kids, people would stare at him. So it'd be mean. Others would pretend he didn't exist, like his problem made them uncomfortable. I saw that same look in the little dragon's eyes, like he was used to being treated differently." Day One sipped his tea slowly. "How did you learn to help him?" "The dragon, I just did what I do for Minho. Make things easier. Adapt." She smiled softly. "Minho taught me that being different isn't the same as being broken. He can't run like other kids, but he's the smartest person I know. He builds things, invents things. He found his own way to be strong." The door opened, and another human came in. So-Min was Jia's co-worker and friend. She saw the dragon customer and bowed politely, then noticed Jia sitting at his table. "Jia, is everything okay?" "Yes. I was just explaining about our guest in the back room." So-Min's eyes widened. "You actually brought him inside?" "Jia, what if someone is looking for him? What if his family is important?" "Then they'll be happy to find him safe," Jia said firmly. "I left markers in the alley. If anyone is searching, they'll find the trail." Day One watched this exchange with interest. The friend was more cautious, thinking about consequences. But Jia simply did what she thought was right. It reminded him of the old stories, from before the Empire became focused on strength and perfection, when dragons valued honor and compassion over power. The day continued. Young Ho, the elderly owner, returned from a market. He was shocked to find a dragon sleeping in his storage room, but Jia explained everything. The old man sighed and shook his head, but he didn't make her take the dragon outside. "Your heart is too big for your own good, child. But I suppose we can't throw out an injured baby." Day One stayed, ordering more tea, then some rice cakes, then soup. He pretended to read from a data pad while actually watching Jia work. She checked on Taeyong every few minutes. She adjusted his position to keep pressure off his wing. She brought him more water and food. She had even created a small ramp out of boxes, so he could climb down from the cushion without jumping. In the afternoon, Taeyong woke up. He seemed confused at first, then frightened. But when he saw Jia, he relaxed. She sat beside him and talked softly. "How are you feeling, little one? Does your wing hurt? I know the splint is uncomfortable, but it will help you heal." Taeyong made a soft chirping sound. He couldn't speak yet, too young for words, but his meaning was clear. He trusted her. Jia reached into her bag and pulled out a small device. It looked like a pad with straps. "I made this for Minho when he was learning to walk with his braces. I thought it might help you." She carefully fitted it around Taeyong's chest. "This will support your weight when you try to move. See? Now you don't have to use your hurt wing." She helped him stand. With the support device, Taeyong could walk without putting strain on his damaged wing. He took a few hesitant steps, then a few more. His tail wagged slightly, a sign of happiness in young dragons. Day One felt something crack inside his chest. It was like a wall he had built over centuries was starting to crumble. His son looked happy, not struggling, not ashamed, not trying desperately to prove he was normal, just happy. The door burst open and Hyunwoo rushed in, forgetting to be subtle. Your Maj! He stopped himself just in time. Sir, we need to speak. Now. Day One stood reluctantly. Thank you for the excellent tea. He placed more coins on the table than the bill required. I will return tomorrow, if that is acceptable. Jia bowed. Of course, honored guest. You're always welcome. Outside, Hyunwoo grabbed Day One's arm. The nobles are asking questions. They want to know why we have not found the prince. Some are suggesting that humans in the lower district kidnapped him. There is talk of searching every building. No, Day One said firmly. Tell them we have located him, and he is safe. Tell them I am conducting a personal investigation. But your majesty, that is an order, Hyunwoo. Day One's voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of authority. The old advisor bowed and left to deliver the message. That evening, Day One returned to his quarters in the upper district. He stood at his window, looking down at the merchant quarter. Somewhere in that maze of buildings, his son was sleeping peacefully in a tea house, cared for by a human who asked nothing in return. His daughter Eunji found him there. Father, is it true? You found Taeyong but did not bring him back. I found him, yes. Then why leave him with strangers? With humans? Her voice carried disgust on that last word. Day One turned to face her. When was the last time you saw your brother happy? Eunji blinked, surprised by the question. He is always struggling, always falling behind. Exactly. He struggles because we expect him to be something he is not. We expect him to fly like you, to be strong like his brother. We treat his differences as failures. Day One looked back at the window. But today, I watched a human treat him like he was perfect exactly as he is. And for the first time in his life, your brother smiled. Eunji said nothing. She had no response to that. I will bring him home soon, Day One continued. But first, I need to learn something. I need to understand what that human knows that we have forgotten. Alone again, Day One thought about the morning. He thought about Jiao's words. Being different isn't the same as being broken. It was such a simple idea. But somewhere in the 10,000 years of dragon civilization, they had forgotten it. They had decided that only the strong, the perfect, the ideal deserved respect. Maybe it was time for that to change. Maybe a human waitress could teach an emperor something important. Tomorrow, he would return to that tea house. He would watch and learn. And perhaps he would begin to see his son through new eyes. 3 days passed. Each morning, Day One returned to the tea house in his disguise. Each day, he watched Jia care for his son with patience and creativity that amazed him. Taeyong was healing well. The little dragon could walk around now using the support device Jia had made. He followed her everywhere, chirping happily when she talked to him. On the 4th morning, Jia arrived at the tea house with a man carrying a large bag of tools. Young-ho, this is Dong-hyun. He's an engineer. I asked him to come look at our little friend. The one, sitting at his usual table, watched carefully. Dong-hyun was a thin human with kind eyes and grease stains on his hands. He knelt beside Taeyong and studied the injured wing with professional interest. The bone is healing straight. That's good, Dong-hyun said. But even when it heals, flying will be difficult for him. The wing structure is different from normal. See how the joint angle's here? It won't generate the same lift. Jia's face fell. So he'll never fly? I didn't say that. Dong-hyun smiled. I said, normal flying will be difficult. But humans don't fly at all, and we figured out how to reach the stars. We adapt. We build things. He opened his bag and pulled out several pieces of light metal and fabric. I've been working on assisted devices for different species. Let me try something. For the next hour, Dong-hyun measured and adjusted, creating a frame that attached to Taeyong's chest and wings. The device had thin metal supports that would help spread his wings properly. Light fabric stretched between the supports, adding surface area to catch more air. Try moving your wings, Dong-hyun instructed. Taeyong flapped hesitantly. The device moved with him, supporting the weak wing while enhancing the strong one. He flapped harder, and suddenly his feet lifted off the ground. Just a few centimeters, just for a second, but he flew. Taeyong chirped excitedly and tried again. This time he stayed up longer. Jia clapped her hand with joy. You did it! You're flying. Daewon gripped his teacup, so hard it cracked. His son was flying. Not perfectly, not like other dragons, but flying nonetheless. And he was happy doing it. The little dragon zoomed around the tea house in short bursts, bumping into tables and chairs, his tail wagging with pure joy. How much do I owe you? Jia asked Donghyun. The engineer shook his head. Nothing. I make these devices because I want to help. Besides, working with a dragon is good experience. Maybe I can help others like him. After Donghyun left, Jia cleaned up the tea house while Taeyong practiced his new flying. Daewon approached her. You have taught him much in these few days. I haven't taught him anything, Jia said. I just gave him tools to be himself. There's a difference. Is there? Daewon asked carefully. Most would say he is broken and needs to be fixed. Jia stopped cleaning and looked at him directly. My brother Minho uses a wheelchair now. Some people say he's broken, but he built that wheelchair himself, made it better than any you can buy. He also builds communication devices for aliens who can't speak human languages. He's going to university next year to study engineering, like Donghyun. She smiled. Is he broken? Or did the world just not have the right tools for him until he made them himself? Before Daewon could respond, the tea house door slammed open. A dragon in golden armor stood in the doorway. It was Jae-sung, a high noble from Daewon's own court. Behind him were 3 other dragons, all wearing expressions of disgust. There it is, Jae-sung said, pointing at Taeyong. The Emperor's shame, play with humans like a common pet. Jia stepped protectively in front of Taeyong. He's not a pet. He's a child and he's hurt. What's wrong with you? Jae-sung laughed, a cruel sound. Stupid human. Do you know who this creature is? This is Prince Taeyong, son of Emperor Daewon, heir to the Crimson Throne. And you have been keeping him here like a toy. The color drained from Jia's face. He's a prince? Not much of one. Another dragon sneered. Look at him. Weak wings, small body, needs human devices just to fly. He's an embarrassment to our entire species. Taeyong made a small, hurt sound and tried to hide behind Jia's legs. The confidence he had shown moments ago vanished. He was trembling. Get away from him, Jia said, her voice shaking but firm. You're scaring him. We're taking him back where he belongs, Jae-sung said, stepping forward. The Emperor has been too soft, letting him wander around. It's time to put him somewhere out of sight. No. The single word came from Daewon. He stood up, and the air in the room changed. His disguise melted away like morning mist. His scales turned crimson. His size increased until he had to duck his head to avoid hitting the ceiling. The imperial markings on his chest glowed with ancient power. Every dragon in the room immediately dropped to their knees, their heads touching the floor. Your Majesty, they whispered in terror. Jia stumbled backward, her eyes wide. I am Daewon, Dragon Emperor. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room like thunder. He looked at Jae-sung. Stand up. Explain to me why you just called my son an embarrassment. Jae-sung's face went pale. Your Majesty, I only meant, the boy is not strong like other dragons. Surely you see that I see a child who learned to fly in 4 days using tools and determination. Daewon interrupted. I see a child who smiles now, who plays, who is happy. What I do not see is an embarrassment. He turned to the other dragons. Leave. Now, tell the court that Prince Taeyong is safe and will return when I decide, not before. The dragons fled. Only Jae-sung remained, still kneeling. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I spoke without thinking. You spoke what you truly believe. Daewon said coldly. That is the problem. Go. I will deal with you later. When they were alone, Jia found her voice. You've been watching us. All this time. Why? Daewon shrunk back to his disguised size and sat down heavily. Because I needed to understand. My son has been alive for 2 years. In all that time, I never saw him happy. Not once. Then you, a human waitress who didn't even know he was a prince, made him smile in a single day. I needed to know how. I just treated him like a person, Jia said quietly, like someone who deserves respect and kindness. That's all. That's all, Daewon repeated. Something so simple, yet something we dragons forgot how to do. He looked at Taeyong, who was peeking out from behind the table. Come here, my son. Taeyong hesitated, then slowly walked over. Daewon picked him up gently, careful not to disturb his healing wing. I am sorry, he said softly. I am sorry that I did not see you clearly before. I am sorry that I let others make you feel ashamed of who you are. The little dragon chirped and nuzzled against his father's chest. Jia watched them, tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now, Daewon said, I must return to the council. There are decisions to make, laws to change, minds to open. But first, I have a question for you, Jia of the Merchant Quarter. Would you be willing to come to my home world? To teach dragons what you have taught me? I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything about teaching. You taught my son to fly. You taught me to see him differently. That is more valuable than any lesson in my palace. Daewon stood, still holding Taeyong. Think about it. I will return tomorrow for your answer. That night, Jia lay awake thinking about the Emperor's offer. Young-ho had told her to follow her heart. So-min had told her she was crazy to even consider it. But Jia kept thinking about Taeyong's happy chirps, about how a simple support device had changed his life. She thought about her brother Minho, about all the people she had met who were told they were broken just because they were different. If she could help change how an entire civilization thought about these things, shouldn't she try? By morning, she had made her decision. The Grand Council Chamber was the largest room in the Celestial Spire. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in circular rows, their seats arranged by power and influence. The dragons occupied the highest tier, looking down on everyone else. This was where decisions that affected trillions of lives were made. Daewon sat on his throne with Taeyong beside him. The little dragon wore his support device proudly, his head held high. Many delegates stared, whispering behind their hands. A disabled prince brought to an official council meeting? It was unprecedented. It was shocking. Eunji sat to her father's right, her expression carefully neutral. She had argued with him that morning, telling him this was a mistake. Father, they will see weakness. They will question your judgment. Let them, Daewon had replied. It is time they learn that strength comes in many forms. The council session began with routine matters. Trade agreements, border disputes, resource allocation. Everything was proceeding normally until an alarm shattered the calm. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber. A mechanical voice announced, "Emergency. Structural failure detected. All delegates evacuate immediately." The building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere below, an explosion boomed. The rebel attack that intelligence had warned about was happening now. During the council session, it was perfectly planned for maximum chaos. Delegates panicked. Hundreds of beings rushed toward the exits. But another explosion rocked the building, and part of the ceiling collapsed, blocking the main doors. The emergency exits were too narrow for the larger species. Dragons, being the biggest, were trapped. Everyone stay calm. Daewon's voice cut through the panic. Guards, search for alternate exits. Engineering teams, assess the damage. But the building kept shaking. More debris fell. The structural supports were failing. They had minutes, maybe less, before the entire chamber collapsed. The narrow emergency passages were filling with smoke. Small species could fit through, but dragons, large aliens, and many others were stuck. The maintenance tunnels, someone shouted. They connect to the lower levels. Those tunnels are too small, a guard reported. Nothing larger than a human can fit through them. Daewon felt cold fear. His people were trapped. His daughter was trapped. He looked around desperately for options and saw Jia in the public viewing gallery. She had come to watch the council session, curious about the galaxy's politics. Their eyes met across the chaos. Without hesitation, Jia started moving toward the emergency tunnels. So-min, who had come with her, grabbed her arm. "What are you doing? We should get out while we can." "People are trapped," Jia said simply. "We can help." She reached the tunnel entrance where a group of humans and other small species were gathering. Dong-hyun was there too, having attended a council to present his accessibility proposals. "We need to organize," Jia called out. "Some of us go through the tunnels to find trapped delegates. Others guide them to smaller exits. Who's with me?" Dozens of humans volunteered immediately. They split into teams and crawled into the maintenance tunnels, ignoring the danger. The tunnels were dark, filled with smoke and shaking with each explosion. But they kept going. Jia's team found a group of delegates trapped behind fallen debris. "We can guide you to another exit," she told them. "Follow us, stay low, move quickly." She led them through passages so narrow that she had to crawl. Behind her, aliens who normally looked down on humans followed gratefully, trusting her completely in that moment. She brought them to a small service exit that opened onto a lower floor where evacuation ships waited. Meanwhile, Taeyong watched from the main chamber. He saw humans disappearing into tunnels, saw them saving people that dragons couldn't reach. His father stood helplessly, too large to follow. The Imperial guards could do nothing, but the humans, the species that dragons barely noticed, were becoming heroes. The little dragon made a decision. He launched himself into the air, using a support device, and flew toward the tunnels. "Taeyong, no!" Eunji screamed, but he was already gone. The prince flew through passages that adult dragons couldn't enter. His small size, the weakness that always made him feel ashamed, now became his greatest advantage. He found a group of young delegates trapped in a collapsed classroom. They were terrified, crying for help. "Follow me," Taeyong chirped. He couldn't speak human words yet, but they understood his meaning. He led them through the maze of corridors, his flying unsteady but determined. When his wing got tired, he walked using his support device. When the path was blocked, he found another way. He brought all 15 young ones to safety. Then he went back inside. Again and again, he flew into the burning building, finding trapped people and leading them out. He was small enough to fit through gaps that others couldn't. He was brave enough to keep going when others would have stopped. Jia saw him during one rescue. "Little one, it's too dangerous." But Taeyong chirped stubbornly and dove back into the smoke. She had no choice but to follow him, trusting his instincts. Together, they found Jae-sung. The dragon noble who had called Taeyong an embarrassment was pinned under a fallen beam. His leg was crushed. He looked up at them with pain and shame in his eyes. "Please," he whispered, "help me." Jia didn't hesitate. "Taeyong, I need your help." The little dragon positioned himself under one end of the beam while Jia used a piece of metal as a lever. Together, they lifted it enough for Jae-sung to drag himself free. "I can't walk," Jae-sung gasped. "Leave me. Save yourselves." "Not happening," Jia said firmly. She looked at the narrow tunnel ahead. There was no way the large dragon could fit. But then she noticed the ventilation shaft above them. It was wider, meant for airflow to the upper levels. "Can you fly at all?" she asked Jae-sung. "Not with this leg," he groaned. "Then we carry you." Jia called for help through her communicator. Within minutes, Dong-hyun arrived with rope and a makeshift sling. They created a harness around Jae-sung. Taeyong grabbed one end with his teeth, while Jia and Dong-hyun pulled from below. Slowly, painfully, they dragged the injured dragon to the ventilation shaft to safety. When they emerged outside, the rescued delegates cheered. Daewon ran to his son, gathering him in his arms. "You foolish, brave, wonderful child," he said, his voice breaking. "You could have died." Taeyong chirped happily and nuzzled his father. He was covered in soot, his support device was dented, and his wing hurt, but his eyes sparkled with pride. He had helped. He had saved lives. He had proven that being different didn't mean being useless. Jae-sung crawled over to them, his injured leg trailing behind him. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing his head to the ground. "I was wrong. I called your son an embarrassment. I said he was weak. But today he saved my life. This small, disabled prince did what I could not do. He was brave when I was helpless. Tears ran down the noble's face. I am the one who should be ashamed. Not him. Never him. Day one looked around at the scene. Humans were helping aliens 3 times their size. Small species were carrying large ones. Taeyong, the son he had once pitied, was being praised as a hero by delegates from a dozen worlds. Everything he thought he knew about strength and weakness was wrong. The news feeds captured everything. Within hours, images of Taeyong leading rescue spread across the galaxy. A disabled dragon prince wearing a human-made device, saving lives that strong, perfect dragons could not reach. The story touched hearts everywhere. That evening, as medical teams treated the injured and engineers assessed the damage, Day One gathered Jia, Donghyun, and his children. Today, you all taught the galaxy something important. You taught us that weakness is just strength we haven't learned to use yet. That different isn't less. That the smallest among us can be the mightiest when courage matters more than size. He looked at Jia. My offer still stands. Will you come to my homeworld? Not just to teach, but to help us rebuild our entire civilization around these truths. Jia looked at Taeyong, who was sleeping peacefully despite his exhaustion. She thought about all the young ones he had saved. She thought about Minho and every person who had ever been told they weren't good enough. Yes, she said quietly. I'll come, but I have conditions. Day One smiled. Name them. Donghyun comes with me. We'll need engineers. And I want to bring Minho to meet your people. They should see that humans with disabilities can do amazing things too. If we're going to change minds, we need to show them it's possible. Agreed, Day One said immediately. Anything else? Yes, Taeyong gets to be who he is. No more hiding. No more shame. He's a hero now, and everyone should know it. Day One gathered his son close. The entire galaxy already knows it, and I will make sure no one ever forgets. 3 months had passed since the rescue at the Celestial Spire. Jia stood at the window of her new quarters on the Dragon homeworld, watching the twin suns set over the Crystal Mountains. The view was beautiful, but she barely noticed it anymore. Her mind was focused on tomorrow's challenge. The Dragon homeworld was nothing like the Celestial Spire. Here, tradition ruled everything. The palace alone was older than human civilization. Every stone, every custom, every law had existed for thousands of years. And Jia, a young human waitress, was trying to change it all. It had not been easy. The first week, noble dragons refused to even speak to her. They whispered that the emperor had gone mad, bringing humans to their sacred world. Some demanded she be sent away. Others simply ignored her existence. But Day One stood firm. He created a new position for her, cultural advisor to the Crimson Throne. He gave her an office, a budget, and most importantly, his complete support. Donghyun received a workshop and a team of dragon craftsmen. Minho arrived 2 weeks later. His wheelchair upgraded with dragon technology that made it faster than most beings could run. The real work began with the schools. Jia visited the Imperial Academy, where young dragons learned to fly, fight, and lead. She watched as instructors separated the strong from the weak, as students who struggled were pushed aside or mocked. It reminded her of everything she had fought against back home. This has to change, she told Day One that evening. You can't build a better society if you're teaching children that being different means being worthless. So they created new programs. Donghyun designed adaptive devices for dragons with various disabilities, flying harnesses for weak wings, communication devices for those who couldn't speak clearly, strength enhancers for small bodies, tools that let every dragon participate in their own way. Minho started teaching engineering classes. The young dragons were fascinated by him. Here was a human who couldn't walk, yet he built machines that could fly, think, and create. He showed them that limitations were just problems waiting for creative solutions. Slowly, things began to shift. A young dragon named Haewon, who had always struggled with learning, suddenly excelled when Donghyun created a visual learning device for her. A dragon with a speech impediment found his voice through a translator that Minho designed. One by one, Dragons who had been hidden away or ignored started to emerge, to contribute, to shine. But not everyone was happy. Jisung, despite his change of heart, faced harsh criticism from other nobles. They called him a traitor for supporting the humans. Some refused to speak to him. His own family disowned him. Yet he persisted, using his wealth to fund accessibility projects and speaking out against discrimination. The biggest test came when Day One announced his new laws. Every public building must be accessible to all body types. Every school must provide adaptive tools. Discrimination based on physical ability was now illegal. The punishment for breaking these laws was severe, even for nobles. The noble council exploded with anger. "You are destroying our culture," one ancient dragon roared. "We are warriors, conquerors. You won't make us weak like the humans." Day One stood before them, his presence commanding absolute silence. "I watched my youngest son risk his life to save others. I watched humans half our size rescue delegates we could not reach. I learned that true strength is not about size or perfection. It is about courage, compassion, and the will to help others. If that makes us weak, then I am proud to be weak." The vote was close, but the laws passed. The Dragon Empire would change, whether the old nobles liked it or not. Today was a public demonstration, a chance to show the entire dragon population what the new programs had achieved. Thousands gathered in the grand arena. Many came to mock, to prove that the Emperor's ideas were foolish. Others came with hope, wondering if maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Jia stood backstage with Taeyong and 20 other young dragons. Each one had a disability that would have kept them hidden away before. Now they wore support devices, adaptive tools, and most importantly, confidence. Taeyong's wing had healed well, but he still needed his flying harness. He wore it like armor, proud of what it represented. "Are you ready?" Jia asked them. They chirped and roared their agreement. These children had spent weeks training for this moment. They would show their world what they could do. The demonstration began. One by one, the young dragons performed tasks that everyone said they couldn't do. A dragon with 3 legs ran an obstacle course using a prosthetic that Dong Hyun designed. A deaf dragon navigated a complex maze using a visual guidance system. A dragon with small wings performed aerial maneuvers using an advanced harness that let her soar higher than normal dragons. The crowd watched in stunned silence. These weren't broken creatures, struggling to keep up. These were capable, confident young ones doing incredible things in their own unique ways. Then came Taeyong's turn. The little prince, now grown slightly bigger but still small for his age, flew into the arena. His harness gleamed in the sunlight. The crowd murmured, remembering the rescue 3 months ago. They had seen the news footage, but seeing him in person was different. Taeyong performed the traditional flight test that all young dragons must pass to be recognized as adults. It was a difficult course, requiring speed, precision, and endurance. Most dragons failed on their first attempt. But Taeyong, using his harness and his unique flying style, completed it flawlessly. He flew through rings, avoided obstacles, and finished with a perfect landing. The arena erupted in cheers. Even the nobles who had opposed the changes found themselves applauding. It was impossible not to be moved by what they had witnessed. Day One stepped forward to speak. "My people, what you have seen today is the future of our empire. Not a future where we lower our standards, but one where we expand our understanding of what is possible. These young ones are not weak. They're innovative, determined, and brave. They represent the best of what we can be." He gestured to Jia, Donghyun, and Minho. "Humans taught us something we had forgotten. They taught us that strength comes in many forms. That adaptation is not surrender, but evolution. That a civilization is measured not by how it treats its strongest members, but by how it cares for all its people." A young dragon from the audience stood up. "But what if other species see this as weakness? What if they think we are becoming soft?" It was Eun-ji who answered. The Emperor's daughter had been quiet during most of the changes, watching and learning. Now she spoke with conviction. "Let them think what they want. Our military is stronger than ever because we now include dragons who were previously excluded. Our scientists make breakthroughs because we embrace different ways of thinking. Our society is richer because we value all contributions. We are not becoming weak. We are becoming complete. The crowd's cheers grew louder. The old nobles looked at each other, realizing they were outnumbered. The young dragons, the common citizens, the soldiers, they all supported this new direction. The empire was changing, and there was no going back. That evening, Jia found Daewon in the royal gardens. Taeyong was playing with Haewon and other young dragons, their laughter filling the air. They flew together, each using their own methods, but all belonging. "Do you miss the tea house?" Daewon asked. Jia smiled. "Sometimes. It was simpler, but this matters more. Back there, I help one person at a time. Here, I'm helping change an entire civilization." "You did more than that," Daewon said quietly. "You changed me. When I saw you holding my son that first day, I realized I had been blind. I was so focused on what he couldn't do that I never saw what he could do. You taught me to look with different eyes." "And you were willing to learn," Jia replied. "That's the hard part. Changing yourself, admitting you were wrong. Not everyone can do that." Daewon watched his son play. He is happy now, truly happy. That is worth more than all the power in the galaxy. Months turned into years. The Accessibility Institute grew, training dragons and other species in inclusive design. Schools across the empire adopted new teaching methods. Adaptive technology became normal, not shameful. Young dragons with disabilities no longer hid in shame, but participated fully in society. Jia eventually returned to the Celestial Spire, but not as a waitress. She became an ambassador, teaching other species what the dragons had learned. Donghyun's design spread throughout the galaxy. Minho opened his own school, training engineers from hundreds of worlds. And Taeyong, the disabled prince who everyone said would never amount to anything, became a symbol of hope across the galaxy. When he finally took his place in the line of succession, no one questioned whether he was worthy. They knew that his unique perspective, his understanding of struggle and adaptation, would make him a wise and compassionate leader. Years later, when visitors came to the dragon homeworld, they would see something remarkable. Dragons of all shapes and sizes working together, flying together, building together. Some used devices, some did not, but all were valued equally. The empire had transformed from one that prized perfection into one that celebrated diversity. And in a museum in the capital city, they kept a simple display, a worn support harness, a makeshift wing split, and a faded photo of a human waitress holding a baby dragon. The plaque beneath read, "The day everything changed, when a simple act of kindness taught an empire the meaning of true strength."